After many serious discussions with Meg and Joe, the pattern was chosen, the materials bought, and the slippers begun. A cluster of grave yet cheerful pansies on a deeper purple ground was pronounced very appropriate and pretty, and Beth worked away early and late, with occasional lifts over hard parts. She was a nimble little needlewoman, and they were finished before anyone got tired of them. Then she wrote a very short, simple note, and with Laurie's help got them smuggled onto the study table one morning before the old gentleman was up. When this excitement was over, Beth waited to see what would happen. All that day passed, and a part of the next, before any acknowledgment arrived, and she was beginning to fear that she had offended her crotchety friend. On the afternoon of the second day, she went out to do an errand and give poor Joanna the invalid doll her daily exercise. As she came up the street, on her return, she saw 4 heads popping in and out of the parlour windows, and the moment they saw her, several hands were waved, and several joyful voices screamed, "Here's a letter from the old gentleman! Come quick and read it!" "Oh, Beth, he's sent you—" began Amy, gesticulating with unseemly energy, but she got no further, for Joe quenched her by slamming down the window. Beth hurried on in a flutter of suspense. At the door her sisters seized and bore her to the parlour in a triumphal procession, all pointing, and all saying at once, "Look there! Look there!" Beth did look, and turned pale with delight and surprise, for there stood a little cabinet piano, with a letter lying on the glossy lid, directed like a signboard to Miss Elizabeth March. "For me!" gasped Beth, holding on to Joe, and feeling as if she should tumble down. It was such an overwhelming thing altogether. "Yes, all for you, my precious. Isn't it splendid of him? Don't you think he's the dearest old man in the world? Here's the key in the letter. We didn't open it, but we're dying to know what he says," cried Joe, hugging her sister and offering the note. "You read it. I can't. I feel so queer. Oh, it is too lovely." And Beth hid her face in Joe's apron, quite upset by the present. Joe opened the paper and began to laugh, for the first words she saw were, "Miss March, dear Madam." "How nice it sounds! I wish someone would write to me so," said Amy, who thought the old-fashioned address very elegant. "I have had many pairs of slippers in my life, but I have never had any that suited me so well as yours," continued Joe. "Heart's ease is my favourite flower, and these will always remind of the gentle giver. I like to pay my debts, so I know you will allow the old gentleman to send you something which once belonged to the little granddaughter he lost. With hearty thanks and best wishes, I remain your grateful friend and humble servant, James Lawrence." "There, Beth, that's an honour to be proud of, I'm sure. Laurie told me how fond Mr. Lawrence used to be of the child who died, and how he kept all her little things carefully. Just think, he's given you her piano. That comes of having big blue eyes and loving music," said Joe, trying to soothe Beth, who trembled and looked more excited than she had ever been before. "See the cunning brackets to hold candles, and the nice green silk puckered up, with a gold rose in the middle, and the pretty rack and stool all complete," added Meg, opening the instrument and displaying its beauties. "Your humble servant, James Lawrence. Only think of his writing that to you. I'll tell the girls. They'll think it's splendid," said Amy, much impressed by the note. "Try it, honey. Let's hear the sound of the baby piano," said Hannah, who always took a share in the family joys and sorrows. So Beth tried it, and everyone pronounced it the most remarkable piano ever heard. It had evidently been newly tuned and put in apple pie order, but perfect as it was, I think the real charm of it lay in the happiest of all happy faces which leaned over it, as Beth lovingly touched the beautiful black and white keys and pressed the bright pedals. "You'll have to go and thank him," said Joe, by way of a joke, for the idea of the child's really going never entered her head. "Yes, I mean to. I guess I'll go now before I get frightened thinking about it." And to the utter amazement of the assembled family, Beth walked deliberately down the garden, through the hedge, and in at the Lawrences' door. "Well, I wish I may die if it ain't the queerest thing I ever see," The Peony has turned her head. She'd never have gone in her right mind," cried Hannah, staring after her, while the girls were rendered quite speechless by the miracle. They would have been still more amazed if they had seen what Beth did afterwards. If you will believe me, she went and knocked at the study door before she gave herself time to think, and when a gruff voice called out, "Come in!" she did go in, right up to Mr. Lawrence, who looked quite taken aback, and held out her hand, saying, with only a small quaver in her voice, "I came to thank you, sir, for—" But she didn't finish, for he looked so friendly that she forgot her speech, and only remembering that he had lost the little girl he loved, she put both arms round his neck and kissed him. If the roof of the house had suddenly flown off, the old gentleman wouldn't have been more astonished. But he liked it. Oh dear, yes, he liked it amazingly, and was so touched and pleased by that confiding little kiss that all his crustiness vanished, and he just set her on his knee and laid his wrinkled cheek against her rosy one, feeling as if he had got his own little granddaughter back again. Beth ceased to fear him from that moment, and sat there talking to him as cosily as if she had known him all her life. For love casts out fear, and gratitude can conquer pride. When she went home, he walked with her to her own gate, shook hands cordially, and touched his hat as he marched back again, looking very stately and erect, like a handsome, soldierly old gentleman as he was. When the girls saw that performance, Jo began to dance a jig by way of expressing her satisfaction. Amy nearly fell out of the window in her surprise, and Meg exclaimed with uplifted hands, "Well, I do believe the world is coming to an end."